Hi guys, and welcome back to the Family Ties podcast. It's been a little while, more like a couple of months since I made my last episode. So the location's different. I've had COVID since then. It's been a little bit of a wild ride. Moved. So I'm back, and I would really like to get back to a regular schedule again with our episodes. But my apologies for being so silent during that time frame, but I am glad to be back. Today, we are covering the tragic death of Zoe McCue. And it looks like since I initially wrote this particular story, there has been more news that has come out. So at the end of this, I'll give you a quick recap of what has come out recently in regard to this. But for now, we'll just get started. Before we do get started, though, if you're listening to the podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to send me your recommendations for cases that I should cover, things that maybe I haven't seen hit the news. I'm always open to feedback as well as new, fresh ideas. So definitely comment away wherever you are listening or watching. This is still a pretty fresh case, still developing. So this is pretty fresh. So in the early hours of Easter Sunday morning on April 17th of this year, 2022, 10-year-old Zoe McCue was killed in a fire at her home in Loganville, Georgia. During the fire, Zoe and her older brother Nathaniel were actively searched for when it was feared that they were both in the house. Later, Nathaniel was located by law enforcement in a local church where he admitted to intentionally starting the fire. Of course, the story is more complex than that, but it seems pretty straightforward, but let's dig in a little further. Nathaniel is facing malice, felony murder, and arson in the first-degree charges. Investigators searched the burned home and found evidence of abuse, neglect, and deplorable living conditions. Nathaniel most likely acted out of desperation over the squalor and abuse he and his siblings were forced to endure at the hands of their parents, William Lynn McCue, age 47, and his wife, 38-year-old Karina Wisniewski McCue. Firefighters were unable to get to Zoe in time. Her body was located inside the burned home in a windowless bathroom that served as a makeshift bedroom, with a bed found inside of the bathtub. So little Zoe is, her bedroom is the bathroom for some reason. 10-year-old Zoe is remembered as a delightful little girl who loved princesses and the color pink. When I look at pictures of her, it's so weird. Some of these cases that have popped up remind me a lot of my niece. I have two nieces, and they kind of have this fiery kind of strawberry blonde hair, and it just kind of jumps out at me at how we should just think of these children as kids that could live anywhere within our own communities. And so just seeing a kid that looks a lot like somebody you love and care about, it makes it a little bit different. But as far as Zoe's concerned, I'm sure she daydreamed of fairy tales and hoped to be rescued from her prison by a handsome prince. I mean, just thinking that it's not too far-fetched, but, it's just really sad. A heavily redacted record from Georgia's Division of Family and Children Services, DFCS, was released after media sources made an open records request. This report revealed that Zoe's parents had been investigated by the DFCS for child abuse allegations twice since 2015. In fact, the father, William, was even arrested concerning the abuse allegations made in 2019. DFCS was first involved with the McCue family in September of 2015. A Gwinnett County school called DFCS and reported that one of the McCue kids had a sizable mark on his face and that the child claimed that it occurred when his father pushed him onto the ground. The child was interviewed alongside his parents at the school by the school counselor, where he reiterated that his dad pushed him. The mark on his face was documented with photos and a report, but the counselor noted that he looked well cared for and confirmed that there were utilities, water, and food at his home. A caseworker inspected the house, and it was deemed sanitary with working utilities, During a walkthrough, the dad told the caseworker that the family was under a lot of stress because the two youngest children were losing weight and were back and forth from the hospital due to their eating issues. That in and of itself is super strange. And, I'd be curious to learn more about this aspect of the case. And it seems more likely that malnutrition or neglect might be at the root of his statement. But the school counselor told the caseworker that there was no concern of abuse within the home because the child looked well cared for and had good school attendance. Because those are all of the things that mean that there is no abuse taking place in the home. Anyways, as a result, they felt that there was no evidence for concern and the case was formally closed. Now, the second case was opened in 2019 when a Tennessee law enforcement official called the child abuse hotline to report that he had seen William and 4 of his children get out of their vehicle and disappear into the woods. Odd. Very odd. And for a law enforcement officer to be calling the Department of Child Welfare, it's like, come on, guys, pay attention. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Karina was contacted by law enforcement about this incident and claimed that she was under the impression that the children were at their grandparents' house. She also revealed to authorities that William suffered from undiagnosed mental health complications. All right, so now we've had, let's see here, we should count up all of the red flags. We're going to go back and do that. So, hang tight. First red flag, September of 2015, when one of the boys, had a sizable mark on his face and, told them his dad had pushed him down. That's red flag number 1. But when caseworkers come in to do their investigation and everything looks okay, the dad brings up this odd factor of like, oh, there's just been a lot of stress lately because 2 youngest are back and forth between the hospital with eating issues. Okay, so at that point, my question would be, did the caseworker reach out to the hospital to find out, okay, so what was the impression that you guys got while caring for these children? Does it seem like malnutrition's involved, or is there an actual legitimate health reason behind this? So I really highly doubt that they looked into that, but that's red flag number 2. So then red flag number 3 was in 2019 when the Tennessee law enforcement officer contacted the Child Welfare Services to say, hey, this weird guy just kind of disappeared into the woods with these 4 kids. If you see a family on a walk or you see a family going on a hike, that's not suspicious. But there was something suspicious about the way that the father, the demeanor, something to tip this law enforcement officer off that something wasn't quite right. So that's the third one. And then when they called the mom and she's like, oh, I thought they were with their grandparents. Like, okay, so what's up? So there have been 4 red flags that that law enforcement and child welfare has just completely breezed past, especially when she revealed to them, oh, by the way, he has a lot of mental health complications. Okay, so then are we discussing, okay, so what steps is he taking to fix this issue? Are we afraid that this could result in the children being unsafe in any way, shape, or form? There aren't a lot of details about what the law enforcement officer saw that tipped him off to that call, to call that abuse hotline. But enough was witnessed basically for him to, to warrant a little deeper of a search into the family. So they were found several hours later walking down a road, the dad and the kids. A news article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution states that William had kicked in the door of an abandoned house in the woods, the DFCS report said, but no further details were included. He was arrested and charged with child abuse, and the mother drove from Gwinnett to pick up the children, the report said. So I would really like to know legitimately. So there's no other details that they provide here, but he was arrested and he was charged with child abuse. So, he's the father. No one during this story, I feel like there's a big gap that we're missing here. Like, what happened in that little house that he kicked the door in? Was he physically abusing them, sexually abusing any of them? What, yelling, verbally, what was going on for him to actually be charged with child abuse and to be arrested, especially if it was found that everything was okay and all hunky-dory? Something happened. Something was not all hunky-dory. So then he was arrested, charged with child abuse, and the mother drove from Gwinnett to pick up the children. After the fire this year, authorities uncovered signs and evidence of abuse while investigating the remains of the house. At that point, the case was handed over to the Gwinnett County Police Department, Special Victims Unit, for further investigation. They discovered that the children had not attended school in years. The home didn't have a functioning sewage system, and the children had been using buckets as makeshift toilets. It was evident that the kids had not showered in potentially months. Can you imagine? The article from Atlanta Journal-Constitution states that it is believed that the children had not been outside of the house in years. I wish I had more details to share with you about all of the evidence that the police found to make them believe this. But since this case just kind of occurred within the last few months, I'm sure that more details are going to be revealed over time, just like the news that has come out since this case, which I'll let you know. But it doesn't seem like any more information kind of regarding this has come out. I think people kind of, they get tired of not get tired of these stories, but they lose interest in these stories. So they're not constantly updated like your Gabby Petito cases. And even though this was a really cute white girl, I don't see this as being something that people are going to stay hungry for news on. And I think that's just a shame. But that's why we're here, and that's why you're here, is you care. And we're going to continue to dig. I have a lot of updates that I need to go back and record and update on previous cases that I've covered, so bear with me. That's another thing on my list to do. So back to the home, back to Zoe's burned home. So they said that the children had potentially not showered in months or been outside, but the children's paternal grandmother expressed shock over the fire, the death of her granddaughter, and the uncovered evidence of child abuse. She told law enforcement that she was under the impression that William and Karina were good parents. She hadn't seen her daughter, son-in-law, or grandchildren since the pandemic started due to her poor health. So it's no surprise, really, that she was unaware of the children's conditions. So I'm not passing blame here on her at all. I completely understand this particular situation. She told law enforcement that she knew that William was homeschooling the children, but seemed to think everything was okay. Now, we'll come back to that, just because I think there's an interesting sticking point relating to that. And, when people yank their kids out of school and decide to homeschool them, especially after you've been, investigated twice and you've been arrested once for child abuse, this type of thing should never happen. If we had the proper laws on the books in every state, it would mean that if you have a record of child abuse or neglect or any violent or sexual case against you, you shouldn't be able to just yank your kids from school. That seems like a no-brainer, but we can't even get those types of laws passed. Thank you, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, for, actively ruining the lives of a lot of endangered children. But essentially, there was a news article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that revealed that after the fatal fire, an emergency hearing was held April 18th, and the 3 remaining siblings were moved into protective custody, according to court records. There are custody hearings underway regarding the fate of the other 3 children. I'll check back into that a little bit later as well. When we wrap up with some kind of current in the news, I'll be sure to kind of see if that pops up, any information on that. But a May 6th news report by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution states that Gwinnett County Police are searching for a Loganville couple facing child cruelty charges after their daughter was killed in a fire at their home, and the ensuing investigation revealed unsanitary and dangerous living conditions for their 5 children. Additionally, William and Karina McCue are both wanted on counts of first-degree cruelty to children, second-degree cruelty to children, and false imprisonment. William and Karina remain on the run and have not yet been located. We'll circle back around to that as well. But they were last seen at the Hometown Suites in Lawrenceville and are known to be driving a 2017 white Honda Accord. They were last seen driving in the Gwinnett County City Norcross at the intersection of Oak Brook Parkway and I-85 North. But I'm going to skip over here to the news. I searched it, and I had seen something pretty recently that came up, and I think June 30th. So relatively recently, according to Fox 5 Atlanta, two Gwinnett County parents who've been on the run following the death of their daughter in a house fire have been caught on the Appalachian Trail, deputies say. So they have been caught. So they've both been charged with first and second degree child cruelty. And so the 15-year-old brother, Nathaniel, he's been charged with first degree arson, malice murder, and felony murder. So looks like there have been some progressions there. So after weeks of investigation, Fox 5 News says that deputies tracked the McCues down to a part of the Appalachian Trail. Both William and Karina were apprehended and transported to the Gwinnett County Police Department for questioning. So they are both now held without bond and charged with child cruelty. So coming back from the news, which I'm so glad that they've been caught. I don't really know what's in store for them or what, this type of charge carries. But CBS 46 News reports that the community had an inkling something wasn't right. Boy, what a surprise. A neighbor, Michael Kilgore, is quoted as having said that people around here kind of suspected something wasn't right. We knew something wasn't right. So he's saying something wasn't right repeatedly. They never left that house. If they did, they left early in the morning. They leave at dark, come back at dark, but very seldom did anybody leave that house, he told CBS 46. On May 9th, William McCue's mother begged the couple to come home and turn themselves into authorities. She claimed not to have had any ideas as to where they had disappeared to. These parents are guilty of keeping their children virtually imprisoned inside of this home, where they were rarely allowed to leave, and they didn't have access to clean living standards. So just imagine a pigsty, essentially. Like, I don't know how else to say it. When you have five kids and you don't have running water or the correct utilities, I just don't understand how this kind of thing happens. But, these 5 children were forced to live in terrible conditions with no access to medical care, basic hygiene, and poor nutrition. I found an article by Fox 5 Atlanta News that revealed that before the parents went on the run, they were conveniently playing dumb and expressing shock over the 15-year-old Nathaniel's actions. So this kind of thing just makes me sick. But they were trying so hard to act innocent. William McCue is quoted as saying, "I love my son, and I don't understand this. I really don't. My biggest question is why." The now tone-deaf piece by Fox 5 Atlanta, published on April 19th, states that on top of the loss of their home and their daughter, the McCues are now being accused of abuse and neglect. So William went on to make excuses and claim that they were rarely seen outside of their home due to the pandemic. And, it makes it seem as if the parents were the ones suffering from unfair circumstances in this particular article I came across. Since then, they have posted updates and been transparent about what's going on and not siding with the parents. But this initially, this is the initial reaction that we just give parents a pass. Like there's got to be a reason, of course, they must be under a lot of stress and, so I had written that I hope Fox 5 Atlanta intends to set the record straight now that all this evidence has been revealed. And they've been following the story. So excellent job, you guys. Sorry to call you out for a second. Hi, you guys. I just wanted to insert myself here at this point in the video clip and just let you know there has been more news that has come out in relation to this case. And it looks like, and I'm reading from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yet again, and it looks like in their story titled, "Gwinnett Parents Indicted on Murder Charges in Daughter's House Fire Death," it looks as if the parents of Zoe, they've been indicted on murder charges in Gwinnett County. And so the reason that's important is, remember earlier on in this very video that we discussed that the son was the one who had set the fire, and he was the one who they were holding responsible. And so this is kind of a new turn of events. It looks as if they've been charged with 3 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of cruelty to children in the first degree, 1 count of aggravated assault, and 1 count of false imprisonment in the death of their daughter, Zoe McCue. Essentially, because they pose a risk of fleeing, their bond has been denied. So because they had fled the first time and then had to be located, they're now being denied bond, which is a good idea. But according to the indictment, this article says that Zoe had been locked in her room, which, once again, remember, was the bathtub, that was her bed, by her parents when her 15-year-old brother intentionally set fire to their home. So, of course, we already know that the son was found at a church and that he admitted to starting the fire and was taken into custody and on murder and arson charges. But it looks like those charges will most likely remain the same. But the teen knew his family was inside when he started the fire. So, I mean, he's still going to keep those charges are still going to be on him for sure. But once again, so this article goes a little bit further than some of the articles we've kind of quoted from earlier. But essentially, this says that the couple allegedly used their hands, belts, and a metal pipe to strike and beat the children, deprived them of running water, and made them use the toilet in buckets in their bedrooms, made them stand on cinder blocks for extended periods of time, and refused to allow them bathroom breaks, resulting in the children soiling themselves, which is part of the indictment against the parents. So the children were also whipped until they collapsed during punishments and shocked with electric collars, not allowed to attend school or be homeschooled, so no education whatsoever, and isolated so that they didn't see their siblings or neighbors, the indictment says. So it took around a month for them to be found, but the couple who had been on the run in early May, they were found on that Appalachian Trail in June. And so since then, this has come out. And I'm curious to see what else might come out about this. But the horrendous conditions were enough child abuse in this case. But the fact that they have further proof of beating and physical abuse is just... What these children endured is so heinous. And as much as I disagree with setting a house on fire and burning up everybody, including, your innocent siblings, I'm not condoning that, but I'm saying that it's clear how that happened or what led that child to set that fire in the first place. And, the fact that Zoe was locked in the bathroom. The child abuse had gotten to such a point that they were keeping the kids, away from each other so that they couldn't, I guess, team up and do something. And, making them stand on cinder blocks, all of that is just, it's horrendous. And denying them school, all of those things. It was like those children have really been through it. The surviving children, they have a lot of therapy ahead, I would say, in regard to moving past some of this, and they probably will never move past some of this. That's your update. I just had to pop on and say, hey, I found something new came up. But for now, thank you so much.